Part 2. Hell's Trials. Time lost all meaning in this nightmare realm. Days, weeks, perhaps even months blurred together in an endless cycle of torment that the silent, horned creature called treatment. Each new horror seemed designed to strip away another layer of my humanity, to break me down to my very core. The first chamber I was thrust into was aptly named the Mirror Room. Its walls, floor, and ceiling were covered in warped, funhouse mirrors that distorted my reflection in nauseating ways. But it wasn't just my physical form that was twisted. Somehow these cursed surfaces reflected the darkest parts of my soul. I watched, unable to look away as scenes from my past played out before me. The first time I stole to fund my habit, my mother's tears as she begged me to get help. The friends I'd betrayed and abandoned in my relentless pursuit of the next high. Each memory was amplified, distorted, until I could taste my own shame like bile in the back of my throat. The horned creature stood motionless behind me, its blank face betraying no emotion as I screamed and clawed at the mirrors, trying in vain to escape the truth they showed me. Next came the sensory chambers, a series of small, coffin-like boxes, each designed to assault a different sense. In one, I was submerged in total darkness while discordant, maddening sounds assaulted my ears. Another filled with a light so bright it felt like my eyeballs were melting in their sockets. The worst was the stench box, where I was forced to inhale a constantly changing cocktail of foul odors that triggered vivid, horrifying hallucinations. Throughout it all, my body screamed for drugs. Every cell seemed to vibrate with need, my veins feeling like they were filled with fire ants rather than blood. I would have given anything for just one hit, one moment of chemical peace. But there was no escape, no relief, only the relentless cycle of torment and the silent, watching presence of the horned creature. The liquid tanks came next. Massive cylinders filled with a viscous, foul-smelling fluid that seemed to change color and consistency at random. The creature would submerge me repeatedly, each time leaving me under a little longer. My lungs burned as I fought the instinct to breathe, black spots dancing at the edges of my vision. But it was what I saw while submerged that truly terrified me. Visions of a hell I couldn't have imagined before danced behind my eyelids. Vast, alien landscapes populated by beings that defied description, geometries that shouldn't exist, and always the sense of something ancient and hungry watching me from just beyond the veil of reality. The worst, by far, was the pit. A yawning chasm in the facility's bowels, so deep that no light seemed to penetrate its depths. The air that wafted up from its maw was thick with the stench of decay and madness. I was lowered into its depths, left to cling to a fraying rope as things I couldn't see brushed against my skin. Hours or days passed as I hung there, my mind fraying at the edges. Voices whispered from the darkness, some begging for help, others offering terrible bargains. Occasionally, something solid would bump against me and I'd feel the brush of scales or the scrape of claws. The darkness seemed alive, pulsing with malevolent intent. When I was finally pulled up, gibbering and weeping, I found that the patches of my skin had turned a mottled gray, as if the very color had been leached out by the pit's embrace. Between these treatments, I was thrown into a small cell barely large enough to lie down in. The walls pulsed with that same alien rhythm I'd noticed in the creature's skin, and strange symbols carved into the stone seemed to shift and change when I wasn't looking directly at them. It was during these brief respites that I encountered other patients. Some were like me, newly arrived and wild-eyed with terror. We'd exchange frantic whispers, trying to make sense of our shared nightmare. Others had clearly been here longer, their humanity eroded by whatever nightmarish program this was. They shuffled through the halls with vacant eyes, muttering to themselves or carrying out incomprehensible tasks. A few seemed almost reverent, speaking in hushed tones about the cleansing and the great work being done here. They regarded the horned creature with a mixture of fear and adoration, prostrating themselves before it as it passed. I couldn't help but wonder if this was the fate that awaited me if I survived long enough. As another cycle of rehabilitation came to an end, I found myself huddled in a corner of my cell, trying to hold on to the tattered remnants of my sanity. The walls pulsed around me, and I could swear I heard faint chanting coming from somewhere deep within the facility. A skittering sound made me look up. A small, multi-legged thing scuttled across the floor, its eye stalks swiveling to regard me. It was like no insect I'd ever seen, with too many limbs and a carapace that seemed to shimmer with impossible colors. For a moment, I considered crushing it, just to feel some sense of control over my environment. Instead, I watched as it disappeared into a crack in the wall. I envied its escape, wondering what other horrors lurked in the spaces between walls. As I sat there, trembling and exhausted, a realization slowly dawned on me. Despite the unimaginable torments I'd endured, despite the constant gnawing need that had defined my existence for so long, I realized that I hadn't thought about scoring drugs in I couldn't even remember how long. The thought should have been comforting, but instead it filled me with a new kind of dread. What was happening to me in this place? And more importantly, what would be left of me when, if it was over? As if summoned by my thoughts, I heard the heavy tread of the horned creature approaching my cell. Another treatment was about to begin, and I knew with sickening certainty that what I'd experienced so far was only the beginning.